Okay, so we're going to get started, and we'll start right away with the roll call, please, Mr. Clerk.
Councillor Brockington? Here. Councillor Brown?
Here.
Councillor Curry?
Here.
Councillor Devine?
Here.
Councillor Hill? Councillor Kavanaugh?
Present.
Councillor King? Here. Councillor Luloff?
Here.
I think I heard, oh yes, he is.
Here.
Councillor Tierney?
Here.
Vice Chair Carr?
Present.
And Chair Menard, you have quorum, Mr.
Here,
Chair.
thanks very much, Mr. Clerk. And we're going to, I know Councillor Kavanaugh may have to leave a little bit early today, around 10:30. I don't think we're going to have a very, very long meeting. Before we start, I want to recognize that this meeting is taking place on unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. Are there any declarations of interest to declare today? Okay, seeing none. Confirmation of the minutes or the minutes of the Environment and Climate Change Committee meeting of Tuesday, the 19th of March, 2024 confirmed. Thank you very much. The 2024 financial plan for the renewal of the municipal drinking water license. We have no speakers for this item and no written submissions. I did want to just make mention, I don't know if any members want to hold it, but just to mention, we continue to have one of the best quality water systems in the entire world here in the city of Ottawa. So thank you to staff for all you do to make sure you monitor our drinking water and that it's something that I know we can all enjoy right out of the tap, and all of us do. So thank you for all your work here. Is the recommendation carried? Thank you for that. So the next one is the larger item. We've got two speakers, a staff presentation and some correspondence. So we'll hear from the speakers after the presentation. I'll ask the staff to come up for the residential stormwater retrofit program, Rain Ready Ottawa. So I'll ask the staff team to come up and give us a presentation.
YouTube seems to have frozen. I'm going to find out what that means. I'm just going to talk to Pat. Oh, no, she's saying never mind. So we're okay. Yeah.
Yeah, this could be that's a big
Sean, the tree planting strategy is coming or June?
All right, so whenever the team is ready, I'll hand it over to Julia Robinson and Connor Renouf. Thanks so much for all your work on this. Looking forward to the presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Julia Robinson. I'm a section manager in the Climate Change and Resiliency team, and I oversee Rain Ready Ottawa. Today's report shares the findings of the 3-year review of the pilot program for Rain Ready Ottawa and provides recommendations for the establishment of a permanent and an expanded program. I'm joined today by Connor Renouf, who is the program coordinator for Rain Ready Ottawa, and in a minute, he's going to walk us through the presentation. I'm also joined today by Haran Sandanaika, a manager in infrastructure and water services, and he's here to speak to any questions on the alignment with the infrastructure master plan and specifically with the stormwater management retrofits. So thank you very much, and I'll pass it over to Connor. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Chair. So Rain Ready Ottawa responds to direction in the Ottawa River Action Plan and stormwater retrofit plans for the Pinecrest Creek, Westboro, and Eastern subwatersheds. These studies identified that a residential stormwater management retrofit program was essential to meeting retrofitting targets. The reason being is that runoff in these areas causes environmental damage, leads to beach closures, and carries pollutants into the watershed. Increasingly frequent rainfall events from climate change will compound this issue. To alleviate this, Rain Ready Ottawa promotes practices that can help reduce runoff and build resilience by absorbing, storing, and filtering runoff from normal storms. When it comes to flooding from extreme storms, as highlighted in last month's urban flooding report, the city has many other initiatives in place or in development to help build resiliency to extreme flooding. Next slide, please. So Rain Ready Ottawa efforts were focused on the priority areas and to a lesser extent, the secondary areas in the map above. The priority areas where the retrofit studies were completed and the secondary areas were those identified in the program framework as the next areas retrofit studies will be undertaken. These are areas that typically lack modern stormwater management and experience water quality issues from unregulated runoff. Next slide, please. So the Rain Ready Ottawa pilot was implemented with 6 program components, each designed to meet one of several of the program's objectives. These program activities have broadly been successful in incentivizing action, engaging residents, and leading to more stormwater being managed on site. So the first activity is we provided one-on-one home assessments that gave tailored advice to homeowners on how to deal with runoff. We delivered 416 of these across the priority and the secondary areas. Demand for these originally quickly outstripped the original supply, and additional home assessments were offered. And a new innovative approach, e-learning, was also identified to meet this demand. And since that was launched in 2023, e-learning has had over 275 unique user registrations. Through this, users can take up to 4 self-led courses designed to equip users with the skills to install some of the projects on their own and meet the demand that we were seeing for the home assessments. Through industry partnerships, we delivered 4 Fusion Landscape training sessions through a third-party partnership with Landscape Ontario. This resulted in the training of 57 professionals from across Ottawa at over 30 firms in rain-ready techniques. This helps support businesses in transitioning their business models to meet the needs of reducing runoff and to align with the goals of Rain Ready Ottawa. Across the priority and secondary areas, Rain Ready Ottawa engaged with residents at over 40 events, including community events, farmers markets, trade shows, online webinars. We ran fun things like contests and supported rain barrel fundraisers. These events and activities have driven even more uptake in our other program components and have been extremely successful. Rain Ready Ottawa also provides financial incentives up to $5,000 for residents to install things like rain gardens, soak away pits, permeable pavements, undertake downspout redirections, and get FLP design work. To date, Rain Ready Ottawa has distributed over $300,000 in rebates and has leveraged a total of $1.5 million in private investment to support 157 projects for a total investment of $1.8 million in on-site stormwater management. And then lastly, to provide community members with an example of lot level stormwater management and to support the public goals identified in the retrofit studies, Rain Ready Ottawa has to date coordinated the installation of 3 rain gardens across Ottawa. Next slide, please. This image right here just gives some examples of rebate supported projects. The image on the left is a rain garden that this resident installed to manage runoff from their roof after taking the e-learning courses. That top image is an example of a permeable driveway that absorbs rainwater when it falls on it. This was installed by an FLP professional. Below that is an example of a soak-away pit that a resident installed themselves after getting a home assessment. And the image on the right is an example of a downspout redirection to a rainwater collection system that is now managing all the runoff from that resident's property for use on their in their gardens. Next slide, please. And this right here is an example of one of those demonstration rain gardens. This was installed at Manordale Park, and you can see how it looked after the initial installation on the left and how it looked after a couple of years on the right. It is managing the runoff from the community center at this park, and it's got some fun instructional signage that residents can interact with and learn a little bit more about its function. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. Thank you. So through the review, the following key lessons were determined. The first being that rebates are succeeding in incentivizing project installations at a ratio of 1 to 4. The second is that home assessments were very popular, but had some mixed results. They were leading to really great rates of installation of simple projects like downspout redirections, but they were less successful at leading to things like rain gardens and the more complex things we need to see. E-learning is leading to more project installations, especially the ones that we want to target, and is more cost effective than the home assessment program. The landscaping industry is being effectively leveraged and we really turn them into ambassadors of our own program. Outreach activities are successfully reaching residents and leading to engagement with Rain Ready Ottawa resources. The demonstration projects are building community awareness and are also contributing to those public property retrofit goals. And then lastly, some additional approaches will need to be trialed to more effectively support action amongst other housing types, such as condominiums and cooperative housing. Next slide, please. As a part of the review, feedback was also gathered from program participants and the public. From our program participants, we did a range of feedback activities, including surveys and one-on-one interviews. Overall, these found very broad satisfaction with the various program components and support for the program and its goals. Through the public engagement, which was done through Engage Ottawa, we saw strong support for the existence of the program and a desire to see it expanded and extended and for more opportunities for residents to access learning resources. Next slide, please. From this, a series of recommendations have been identified. The first being, as a part of the pilot review, staff looked at 3 renewal options for the future of the program: to end, extend, or make permanent. Staff are recommending that Rain Ready Ottawa be made into a permanent program. A permanent program will provide the long-term stability needed to meet the 50-year stormwater retrofit targets by facilitating the installation of a critical mass of lot-level stormwater management measures. Next is that we will expand the rebate-eligible area to open watercourse subwatersheds, where Rain Ready Ottawa will have the greatest benefit. Some more on this in a moment. Home assessments will be refocused on condo and co-op properties within the priority areas. This will be paired with the exploration of a new rebate stream targeting those properties to increase stormwater management in the priority areas. E-learning will be expanded with new courses added to meet demand by other property owners who may no longer be eligible for home assessments. Likewise, new in-person learning opportunities will also be identified and implemented. Rain Ready Ottawa will expand its presence at community events and identify new activities to further behavior change, program awareness, and resident action. This will include additional alignment with complementing city programs such as the Residential Protective Plumbing Program and Better Homes Ottawa. We'll also continue to build relationships with industry by increasing the number of training courses offered, identify new certifications we can support, and improve collaboration with industry to give residents access to third-party professional knowledge. And then lastly, we will continue to install demonstration projects to support those public goals. Next slide, please. So with regards to the proposed priority area for rebates, staff looked at 3 options for the rebate area. The first was to maintain the existing priority areas. The second was to expand them to the open water courses within the retrofit area. And the third was to expand it to the entire stormwater retrofit area. There will be a map illustrating these options on the following slide. Staff recommend proceeding with option 2, expanding the program priority areas to include stormwater retrofit areas that drain to smaller open water courses before reaching the Ottawa or Rideau River. Expanding to this area will allow Rain Ready Ottawa resources to be concentrated on areas where the program can have the greatest impact. Focusing on these water courses will have beneficial downstream impacts on the Rideau and Ottawa rivers as well. This aligns with the recommended strategy in the draft infrastructure master plan for completing the stormwater retrofit master plan, which prioritizes efforts to achieve direct benefits to local water courses. Next slide, please. So this map just illustrates those expansion options that were reviewed. The blue areas are areas that were prioritized in the pilot program. The orange areas are the recommended expansion areas, and you can see the various small water courses that we will target, such as Sawmill Creek and Graham Creek. The pink areas were included in option 3, but require further study within the retrofit master plan to determine the best approach to retrofitting due to different drainage characteristics. Gray areas are not considered a priority for retrofitting as they have been largely built with modern stormwater management systems. And then lastly, within the core area, you can see some yellow. This is excluded because of the combined sewage storage tunnel. Runoff here is stored until it can be treated at the wastewater treatment plant and safely released back into the Ottawa River. Regardless of where they live, though, residents citywide will still be able to access trained and certified professionals, e-learning, in-person learning opportunities, and the full suite of Rain Ready Ottawa online resources. They can also access other city programs that could provide financial support for flood preparedness, including the Residential Protective Plumbing Program. And with that, I will hand it back over to Julia.
Next slide, please. So staff are recommending that a budget of $610,000 be established to support the permanent program and expansion option number 2. The program will be funded in 2024 and 2025 from existing capital funds through the stormwater retrofit program. And starting in 2026, the funding will be brought forward through the annual budget process. And with that, we close our presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much to our staff team. We've got two delegations on the item. The first delegation is Dan Rudabingwa Gokir. I believe he might be online.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and you've got 5 minutes. Thanks for being here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I'm doing so on behalf of Ecology Ottawa. Urban flooding is an increasing threat to Ottawa residents because of climate change and our poor practices concerning suburbanization. We saw this last August when a record 77 millimeters of rain fell, most of it within 90 minutes, leading to numerous flood basements, road closures, and tens of thousands of residents without power. Given the two water courses that go through Ottawa, Public Safety Canada puts it in a high-risk flood area. And on top of that, we expect to get more extreme weather as our climate warms. And one of these is heavier rainfall. So all of these things I mentioned indicate that flooding will only get worse for Ottawa residents unless we find a way to properly control runoff. The Rain Ready program is excellent and responds to these threats by helping residents take action, not only to protect their own homes, but also those around them. All recommendations of this program should be taken into consideration. The Rain Ready program is right to target priority areas because this prevents flooding over larger water courses. But I still believe the program should be available and accessible to everyone. If possible, offer these simple solutions to everyone regardless of whether they live in the priority areas for free or at a discount, because flooding can happen to anyone in Ottawa and basements will still flood. We also need a faster rollout of the program because, again, flooding happens regularly. Investing in a faster rollout is a small investment compared to how much it will cost the city for flood damages. This would also reduce the need for the residential compassionate grant. The same goes for the e-learning kit. It has tons of useful information that could benefit many Ottawans if it was made available and accessible to everyone. We've seen time and again that Ottawans want to take action. Controlling runoff also reduces the amount of pollutants such as salt, oils, pesticide, and fertilizers carried into our watercourses by stormwater, harming the ecosystem. There are some inefficiencies with consultation and cost assessments, which often lead to simple solutions anyway. So another recommendation is to allow residents to self-assess and or make some retrofits such as rain barrels and spout diversions in priority areas automatic. This would reduce the wait times and backlogs as seen in the report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for being here and for your delegations. I'm not seeing hands up at the moment, but appreciate you being here. Our next delegation is from Aaron Hagos. We're not seeing him online at the moment. So I think with that, we'll move, if we come back online, we can get him on. I think we'll move to any questions for staff from our council members, and Vice Chair Carr.
Okay, I'm happy to start. Thank you very much for the presentation. Very supportive of the recommendations in the report, and want to recognize the outreach efforts. I know I've seen Connor at a few events in my ward over the past year, and done a lot to engage the public and educate them on the Rain Ready program, which is excellent in helping increase sort of our sponginess. Quick question that maybe is not within the purview of Connor's, but one of the issues in my community is people have contemplated getting things such as permeable driveways, but given that we often have road reconstruction, sewer projects, implementing sidewalks, residents often ask what are the risks of getting a permeable driveway? What does the city do to restore it if there's work on the right of way, sidewalks, all of that? That's probably a little bit outside of your purview, but it is a consideration that I've heard from people who are contemplating the program.
Thank you for the question. I think it's an excellent point in terms of the need to continue to align programs like Rain Ready Ottawa with other services that are happening throughout the city. So the Already Connor works closely with other parts of the city in terms of complementary programs, and we would continue to align with a question like this.
Okay, thank you. I know that I had sent you both a bunch of questions after I read the full report. And one of them was, this is a very expensive program for people to participate in. I mean, people that have had driveways redone have paid, $25,000, $20,000. So it's certainly the grant that's available is very much appreciated. And I know that there's some lower cost options. I'm wondering that if we're looking at the other programs that are being reviewed more with respect to flooding with residential protective program, compassionate grant, if there's an opportunity at all to look at, when we look at that compassionate grant program, to look at maybe some elements of the Rain Ready program falling into that, to be able to provide some relief, because there are many, many homeowners in my community that are interested in the Rain Ready program, but they're seniors living on an index pension. And is there any opportunity to sort of marry those efforts when we're looking at those other programs, if that makes sense?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just mention that we are, as the councillor probably already knows, we're looking at a whole range of programs for urban flooding, including the Compassionate Grant Program. We certainly will be looking, one of our goals is to look at alignment or better alignment with other programs. I don't know the outcome of that yet, but that's certainly something that will be considered.
Thank you very much. And I had also commented that I hope that when we're contemplating other demonstration gardens, and it mentioned in the report, looking at maybe neighborhood groups taking over caretaking of those, that there's an opportunity to perhaps marry up the review that's going on right now of the community gardens and greening programs to make sure that that's in place in that opportunity. Can we just, and it may have been in the report and I've forgotten because I read it a few days ago. Can you remind me when the next opportunity to review the program is? So we're renewing this program for 2 years on existing capital funding, and then we'll be seeking long-term operational funding. When will the next review of the program and an opportunity to expand the catchment areas, when will that happen?
Thank you for the question. We will be looking at a full review of the program again in 5 years.
5 years. Okay, great. Thank you very, very much. Appreciated and very supportive of the report and the work you've all done.
Thanks, Vice Chair. I know Councillor Kavanaugh had a physical hand up, and then we're going to go to Councillor Curry, Tierney, Devine, Brown, and Hubel.
Apologies. When it said update your software, I thought it was going to take a couple of minutes. It's still going and I can't get in. Oh, should not have done that. Anyway, thank you very much, Connor. And it's been great to have you at community events, seniors tea, and it's very popular. People are getting educated, even if they didn't qualify or use the program. It just reminds them of how important that we have to soak up that rain. We have to soak up that water. It's so important. I go by outlets when I ride my bike along the path, and I watched it gushing this morning because we've had a lot of rain, and that's all stormwater. I don't want to see it gushing a lot. I want to know that that water is being absorbed. It's a lot healthier because that water is going straight into the river. And talk about water quality. We want that to to be less rather than more. So appreciate all the work. I don't know how you do a cost benefit analysis of the work you're doing, because it's really a small budget. It's very small compared to how much it costs to do a stormwater system. I don't know, is anyone looking at that, like in terms of just how valuable it is financially to the city?
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, I should have known she'd have that question.
I'll just mention that the process that's used for that arrives at the conclusion that Rain Ready is one of the programs we need is it starts from the infrastructure master plan at screening out areas that have opportunities. There's many places have opportunities, but our small urban water courses have the biggest opportunity and the largest area of their drainage area that are developed or have these hard surfaces. And then from the infrastructure master plan, we do retrofit studies, and retrofit studies are a comprehensive way at looking at a watershed and looking at all the opportunities and all the issues in a watershed. And even all small urban watersheds don't have the same issues. And then with the retrofit study, there's a number of recommendations and that are provided. And one of those recommendations aligns with the Rain Ready Ottawa program. That's where the Rain Ready Ottawa pilot came from to provide these absorbent measures on private properties. So sorry, I'm forgetting exactly the nature of the question. The
Cost to the city, like.
Oh, yes, thank you. And so in that context, a number of alternatives are reviewed, and their costs and their long-term benefits. And so that's the lens in which we try to understand cost benefit. It's in those retrofit studies.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that, because I would hate to, think that it was low-lying fruit for cuts, and when it actually has a lot of benefit financially, from what I've observed. I'm going to do a question that's kind of local, but I was at Crystal Bay AGM, and they have a creek, Stillwater Creek, I believe, that goes right through, and they also were flooded pretty severely. They're very interested in these programs. They don't fit into the Pinecrest Creek catchment, but is that possible for the future that they could be included?
Thank you for the question. So Stillwater Creek is one of the areas that we are proposing to add to the priority area. And then other parts of Crystal Bay will be explored further through the retrofit master plan.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. I know that Crystal Beach would be, but Crystal Bay is a little different, but no, and they were actually the worst flooded in 2019. So, and I know it's more about groundwater, but that is a reality too, especially when they're backing onto NCC land, and that doesn't seem to have much to hold the water back. Anyway, thank you for this excellent work. I'm a huge supporter of the program, and hope to see it continue. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Kavanaugh. Councillor Curry.
Thank you. Just to dig a little bit deeper, I understand your response saying that this was taken into consideration, the cost benefit, but in terms of the hard numbers, like if imagining that so assuming this works, right? It diverts stormwater, right? Great thing. Then what, if each resident and every single resident did that in the city, then what would it prevent us from having to do? It would prevent us from having to upgrade all of our storm sewers. Like, these are the kinds of dollar figures that I'm looking for. Like, what is the return on investment for us? If we put money into this, then we're not putting money into this. We're saving so much money in something. Where is that data? Or maybe you can just elaborate here.
Thank you, Chair. The cost benefit analysis, or the costs and the benefits that are reviewed in a retrofit study, are focused on the goal of the retrofit study, which is the health of these small water courses. It's not, the goal does not include trying to mitigate urban flooding, and expanding Rain Ready Ottawa in such a way to try and achieve flooding goals is not effective. If you're flooding from the sanitary sewer surcharging into your basement, you need a backwater valve. Maybe you need a sump pump. Maybe we need to upgrade the sanitary sewer, and maybe we need to help you with your lateral, the pipe that connects the home to the sanitary sewer. So Rain Ready Ottawa can't do all things for all rain issues. It really is focused on small urban water courses and their health.
So, okay. So, and fair enough, we want to make sure that this is not, bad things aren't going into the river. Everybody cares about that. I just think about, are there not other ways that we could do that would be a better return on investment for the city, and were those considered? Maybe your answer is yes, they were.
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Chair. I apologize for not understanding the nuance of your question. The retrofit studies do look at a range of solutions, and Rain Ready Ottawa is one of those solutions that are recommended. The retrofit studies look at absorbent techniques on private property and on public property. They look at what they call lot level measures, which is measures that are on a single property where the rain falls. They look at conveyance measures, which are things like improving the drainage or absorption in rear yard or side yard swales, even street cleaning. And then they look at end of pipe facilities like the Woodruff large facility at Woodruff. That's one of the end of pipe facilities that's part of this program. And then often they will also look at in-stream works. The actual makeup of the range of solutions and where they're being recommended is specific to the water course. But yes, Rain Ready Ottawa is not the only part of that suite of solutions.
Okay. I will just go on to my other question. Thank you for that. So what we are saying to homeowners is this: if you do this, you will help the Ottawa River. When the homeowners, and so homeowners, if they care, some of them wouldn't care, they also have to be considering how it would benefit them. So when I look at some of these rain gardens, I think, does this increase the value of someone's property? Probably not. Like somebody might, as a homeowner going to buy it, might think, I don't want that garden. I got to take care of that garden. So what is the argument we make to homeowners to say, this is a good idea for you because you have to pay, you save all that water, you water your garden, you have a lower water bill. Like, what is the incentive to homeowners to actually do this other than they're environmentally conscious and nice?
Thank you for the question. The other thing that we promote through this is that by effectively managing runoff on your property, you can also protect your foundation. So there's many homeowners who disperse stormwater too close to their foundation. It flows backwards, causes problems for them. Likewise, causes other damage and erosion to their property. So that's the other pitch we make to people, is that by changing how you're managing it, you're now also protecting your home from any kind of damage as a result of runoff from your roof.
Okay, I might think there's some better arguments to make to homeowners as to why they might be interested. My last question is, we received an email from a resident saying that the city would be smarter to spend the money dealing with the ditches and culverts. I don't know if you read that email, but that there's a different problem that would actually solve a lot of other problems if we put our money there. I'm just wondering if you read it, if you have a comment on would we maybe be smarter to do that instead of this?
Thank you, Chair. The simple response is that there's a range of things that are required for stormwater management for different problems, and ditches, ditch alteration, ditch maintenance, restoring ditches in neighborhoods like City View. These are all priorities as well, but they require different solutions. Rain Ready is trying to focus on the health of watercourses, but to focus on drainage such as ditches, they require a different suite of solutions.
Okay, I think there'll be other questions on that, but thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Curry. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Testing. All right. Thank you very much for the presentation today. I see a lot in there, and I just have some quick questions. From the funding source, my understanding it's through the sewer water charge. Is that how you're funding the program?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the stormwater rate is the primary source of funding for all stormwater improvements and stormwater programs.
Right. And just to also look at the fact, have we looked at applying to things like through FCM and the Green Municipal Fund, where we've seen much success in the past with even residential homes and things like that?
Thank you for the question. Our team is constantly reviewing where there are funding opportunities, and should funding opportunities be available, we would be applying to them. So we currently are waiting for funding announcements to be made through FCM about the National Climate Adaptation Strategy.
Right.
Don't have details on that, but this could be one of the programs we could look at if it was eligible.
Okay, so we haven't applied to it yet, but certainly it's something that just as, I don't know if it's direction, Chair, but something, anytime we can save money on, I know it's all one taxpayer, but people never remember how much provincial or federal tax they pay, but they certainly remember their municipal bills when they get them. Go forward, can we ensure that we apply on a program like this, just to ensure that it gets off the tax roll for municipality?
We are always looking for funding opportunities.
Yeah, and they're looking to give money back to communities, so I think it would be a good one for sure. Of course, I have to ask this question because, of course, people only see a headline. Up till now, we've been dealing with a lot of issues as councillors in the front yard. When there's a bylaw issue, if you're in a grandfathered area, they're really not grandfathered, by the way, don't tell people that, but where they built out their laneway too wide in the former city of Gloucester or certain other parts of the city. We're not going after any of that, correct? This is just almost a DIY kind of project. This will not go, hey, you know what? Your laneway is too wide compared to the Ottawa standard that we all now adhere to, rip that out and you're going to have more drainage. We're not doing that kind of thing, correct?
That is correct. We just look to align with the standards for things like private approaches for any new applications that come in for a rebate.
Sure.
That's kind of where we focus on.
Okay, that's terrific news. And again, I just put it on record so people don't start freaking out. And the last one, Weird emails we get sometimes, but you have to address them. We've always dealt with the front of the yard through bylaw, always the front. Backyards, it's always, a bun fight between neighbors. They sue each other for water drainage, for whatever they're doing in their backyards. We're not getting anywhere near any of that kind of stuff at all, correct? Like, I'm just thinking from the liability side. If people decide to start installing things to move water around and it affects neighbors, we've addressed those issues. We've just looked at it. I just know because I deal with it all the time. Someone goes and changes something in their backyard and the neighbor's all upset because now they have water in their backyard. What is our liability? I just want to make sure we have that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So part of the communication and education through this program involves educating people on property standards, on all the requirements for these projects and what you must abide by through the city to ensure you're not creating a problem that is now greater than what you were trying to solve.
Which makes a total amount of sense. And the last question, Chair, thank you. This isn't a rain tax that, was toyed with in Toronto where people lost their marbles. We're not looking at calculating taxes based on any kind of how much water you're holding in your own properties or any of this nonsense that they talked about in Toronto a couple of weeks ago, and it suddenly evaporated, pardon the pun. This is nothing like that at all, correct?
Thank you, Chair. This is unrelated to any programs related to stormwater rate or rate changes or anything like that. This is a program just to support residents making improvements on their own property.
Great. Myth busting complete, and thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Staff, I wasn't able to be at the briefing, but my staff was at the briefing and they very much appreciated it. And we are very much fans of the Rain Ready program. I'm certainly grateful that it's expanding into, I think right now it currently serves parts of my ward. I think it's expanding into other parts of my ward, and I look forward to promoting it. I do now want to kind of just follow up on the line of questioning that Councillor Curry was speaking to with regard to the letter from the hydrogeologist. And this may stray a bit from Rain Ready. In fact, it will stray from Rain Ready, but I rarely have the public opportunity to push on an issue that is of importance. So Connor, this might not be for you, but here in Julia, it certainly it will be. Councillor Curry was referencing how the Rain Ready program, and you use the terms, for those residents who are environmentally conscious, it's a carrot, and I very much appreciate it. But I want to talk about sticks as opposed to carrots. I have raised the issue before about the potentially devastating impact of site alterations that go against the site alteration bylaw and ditch alterations that basically completely interrupt our ditch drainage system. It just so happens that the hydrogeologist is in my ward, and he makes reference to an area of my ward where, as per this person, he says he believes that 50 to 75% of ditches have been filled in illegally. And the impact that he refers to from alteration of these naturally draining ditches is that buried culverts prevent infiltration of stormwater, prevent proper roadway drainage, and do not provide the same stormwater management benefit provided by ditches and swales. So you were mentioning herein that Rain Ready is one solution to stormwater management. So I do want to talk about the city's action or lack of action when it comes to addressing residents who illegally alter their driveways. The area that this resident is from in my ward, on a map, if you look at the impact from August 10th rainfall is huge. A lot of it concentrated there. It also just so happens to be an area that is topographically lower than the rest of the neighborhood. Who wants to live in that basin? But that's where they are. On the issue of the city intervening or not intervening when it comes to site alteration, I'm going to read an email that we got from a resident the other day. I won't mention the addresses, but the owner of such an address, so I've got this person who lives here, right next door. Here's what the neighbor is doing. The neighbor is building a new semi-detached building and has filled in their drainage ditch, adding an extended culvert across the front lawn, but has also dug up the neighboring property and filled in their ditch as well without their awareness or permission. As far as we can tell, none of this should be happening. The ditches are the only stormwater management in the area and should be left open. The individual has tried contacting the city through other means, other than writing to their counselor, but has received no response. So I want to ask a couple questions here, primarily when it comes to, because what the hydrogeologist is talking about is the city utilizing its capacity to tell owners who are illegally filling their ditches that they have to retrofit back to its original design state? So I guess my questions are, one, what is the city doing about illegally filling in ditches and thereby possibly causing bigger problems? What kind of resources would be required for the city to do an area study and determine which properties have had their ditches filled in illegally, and what resources would be required from a legal framework to enforce this and require owners to reset? So I want to talk about sticks and not just carrots. Thank you.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. This sounds like an inquiry
It could be.
and not necessarily on the topic.
Thanks, Councillor Lulaf.
All right.
I'm gonna allow one staff response, but I agree, Councillor Lulaf. I think we're veering a little bit from the main topic. There is obviously some relation here, but I'll allow a staff response to it, and then I think we need to move on to the topic at hand.
All right, thank you. I could draft the inquiry.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep my response brief, understanding that there'll be more dialogue on this to come. The first point is absolutely ditches are important, critical, I would say, infrastructure. And when they are altered, that affects or has the possibility of affecting the performance of the system in a neighborhood. That's absolutely true. You mentioned, though this wasn't the heart of your question, you did mention some redevelopment, and I'll just take this opportunity to point out that the draft infrastructure master plan is recommending programs to help with that aspect of things. But if people are still doing things illegally, that is an enforcement issue. And you mentioned a couple of bylaws that require enforcement. I'll also just mention that we are catching up on this. Historically, we haven't always seen ditch infill as a bad thing. Historically, pre-amalgamation, we had different rules for ditch infill as well. And the challenge with these cumulative impact issues is you don't see sometimes the impact immediately. But after 40 years of alterations, then you start to see the impacts. And the last point I'll just make really quickly, Councillor, is that yes, there is a way to study neighborhoods comprehensively and to come up with programs or infrastructure upgrades, ditch restoration, or other types of infrastructure for a life cycle renewal program. I think you already mentioned, Councillor, that they require a holistic view of the neighborhood, and sometimes you have to start at the downstream end and work your way back up. So these things do take time.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. That was useful information, but I'll ask councillors to stay on our report here. Councillor Brown, you're up next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thanks to staff for the presentation. Very interesting. I guess my first question would be, do we see this program expanding to some of the rural villages at some point in the future?
Thank you, Chair. At the moment, the current plan, it does not include rural areas or rural villages. The strategy or the philosophy behind the screening of areas is both they need to have small urban watercourses or small watercourses where the best benefit can be realized, and they need to have a lot of historical development that was not subject to stormwater management. That's where we get the best bang for our buck. The rural areas don't necessarily always meet all of those criteria. I'll also mention, though it's not an identical program, which is quite clear, there are programs. There's the Ottawa Rural Clean Water, I hope I mentioned the title right, Clean Water Program that helps deal with water quality in rural areas. Rural areas have a different character than our highly dense urban areas. And there's a broader range of solutions that program could help residents and other property owners with. That's a program that's jointly run with conservation authorities. Villages do have some overlap in character with some of these urban areas, but again, the starting point is whether the area that has been developed is large relative to the total watershed. And that's why even the areas that drain directly to the Ottawa River and the Rideau River aren't part of the next phase, because those don't meet necessarily that criteria. They have large watersheds.
Thank you very much. And that program is quite a mouthful, so I appreciate you trying to get through it. My second question, in 2026, the report indicates that a full-time permanent position will be applied for and funds from the stormwater reserve will be used to fund that position. How is that reserve funded right now? And if nobody from finance is here, that's okay.
The program is proposed to be funded through the stormwater management program, so which is funded through rate.
It's through the rate, okay. And so there won't be an impact on the reserves, like we won't be funding positions out of any of our reserve accounts on a go-forward basis post 2026?
Mr. Chair, when we get to 2026, the funding will be submitted through the budget process. At that time, we would determine what the source of that funding would be. That's something that we can't determine right at this moment.
No, thank you very much. And my last question, Mr. Chair, will this program be impacted either positively or negatively with the water rate review that's underway? So will any of that funding be allocated to, or potentially will any of that revenue be allocated to this program in the future?
Thank you, Chair. The rate structure review is something that's led by finance. It's currently ongoing, and I know there's consultations that are either underway or upcoming. So I can't comment on the outcome of that at this point. I will say that the rate structure review is about how we are getting our funding. We know that currently the program and the proposal is to continue to fund it through the stormwater rate, whatever changes there are to how the rate is collected. So there's at this time, all we could say is coming from the stormwater rate.
Thank you very much for the responses, Chair. That's all for me.
Thanks very much, Councillor Brown. Councillor Hubley.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got a couple of questions. I want to start with for staff. It sounds like a great program. I'm just curious because I've had some experience in my ward with Rain Ready Gardens. Have you talked to the people in right of way about this? Because one of the negatives that come out of this is when they build garden boxes or any kind of structures on the right of way, and then the utilities come along and need to dig up that right of way, there's a big discussion about who's going to pay to restore the garden, and should we maybe be warning people ahead of time to only build up to the right of way instead of including the right of way? So were there any of those discussions?
Thank you for the question. So through Rain Ready Ottawa, I've built collaborative relationships with the right-of-way group and seek to align our messaging with that of the changes that happened last year to the right-of-way policy. So that is certainly something we will continue to explore to make sure that people can put stuff like this in, but also respect the requirements of the right-of-way.
So is there any language going to be put in the messaging that goes out to the public? Like if we have somebody that goes out and makes recommendations, are they going to be talking about the right of way or not?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, so within like the e-learning courses, for example, there's a full section that discusses and communicates the requirements of the right-of-way bylaw.
Perfect. Okay, my next question is with your map and your coverage of the program, I really thought after a pilot that it would likely expand to across the city because there is some good ideas in here that should be shared with all the public. So I'm curious about your map. It still kind of looks like an old City of Ottawa program and doesn't really touch on the areas outside of the old city boundaries.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the core rationale for the program are, number one, applied to areas without historical stormwater management. Those are the older areas of the city. They're not exclusively inside the Greenbelt, but the second point is that like I mentioned before, the benefit to larger water courses is less than it is to smaller water courses because the ratio of the amount of land that's been disturbed for smaller urban water courses relative to its overall watershed is higher. So this is where we get the biggest benefit. And this is where we need private property measures more than other measures because we've run out of room and options. That's the basic rationale behind the program, though there is still consideration for expanding perhaps in the future, but that screening and that evaluation has to be done in a future phase.
Okay, I find that disappointing because I think the information could be helpful to a lot of people. Taxpayers across the city are paying for this program, so I would like to have seen some consideration for them. Can you tell me about the carp and the jock, for example, why I don't see them on your plan?
I'll just, before we get to that question, Councillor Hoobie, I saw Mr. Wise with his hand up, and I'll just go to staff for further response.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It is important to note that a lot of the program recommendations and a lot of the material we have shifted it to an e-learning module, so it is available to all residents across the city. Anyone can access that information from whatever part of the city they're in. I'm not in that area myself, although I might wish to be. But I've also found some of the guidance on the e-learning modules quite helpful for me as well. So that is something that everyone can partake in. The other point that I just wanted to make, and just touch back to Councillor Curry's earlier question as well, is that a lot of the subdivisions that we have that are newer have stormwater management ponds. They have public infrastructure that has been built to help manage quality control as it flows through. These are areas that do not have those public infrastructure services. So in terms of the stormwater retrofit project and program, Huron is quite right in pointing out that there's a whole suite of options that are there, from up to and including construction of stormwater management ponds to provide for quality. Now, of course, in these urban areas, the space does not exist for that. So the question might be then, if not this, then what? So in terms of the priorities of this program, this is an incremental education program for residents to try and capture that initial quality surge of water coming off at a lot level to help improve quality before it gets to that water course. It is incremental, it is educational, and the alternative to that, though, is that the solutions would need to be done within the public right-of-way, or they need to be done within the watercourse itself. So just to bear that in mind with respect to when we talk about the cost benefits of this program.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Hubley, back to you.
Yep. So asking about the Carp River and the Jock River watersheds.
Thank you, Chair. Though I don't have specific details on those watercourses at this time, the rationale still remains the same. For any stormwater management problem, we have to look at what opportunities are available. And in those areas, in the urban watercourses, we need a range of solutions for these small urban watercourses, but they need lot level residential measures because they were built before the era of stormwater management. That does not mean that there aren't other things in other watercourses that need to be done, whether it's infrastructure repair or slope stabilization. That, of course, will happen. But areas that either have, as David mentioned, stormwater management, or that have other solutions available that are perhaps more cost effective or can be implemented sooner. Those are the things that we have to look at in other watersheds.
Okay, and another question for you is I noticed that you mentioned condos in here. And typically when it comes to the city and city services, we tend not to be involved with condominium properties unless you're invited in there to do something. And so I'm just curious as to how a condo gets to be a priority in this program under those restrictions.
Thank you for the question. So the initial program design kind of treated these like low-rise condominiums and cooperative properties as a single property. So that meant they're ineligible for many program activities. And we saw a bit of a low rate of take up from them, even though they are also contributing to stormwater runoff in these priority areas. So by sort of changing our focus to kind of deal with them, we are opening up new opportunities for retrofitting, and likewise meeting a need that was identified through the public engagement and through many other engagement forms from owners of these properties or residents of them who felt that they wanted to be able to help their properties take advantage of it, but felt like they could not. So that's why we're looking at some more targeted outreach to those property types.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thanks for those questions, Councillor Hubley. Councillor Brockington.
Thanks, Chair. Now it's my turn. Are we good now? All right, thank you. I live in one of those condos. I live in a house, just happens to be part of a condo project, and I don't get a water bill directly from the city. I pay as part of an aggregate billing system through the condo. So there is one mailing to residents that I thought the provincial government did not allow us to include any type of insert into the bill. And I'm not sure if it's the water bill, but my question is about how we do public engagement and outreach and inform the public going forward. Can you just expand on how we're going to make people outside of the pilot neighborhoods aware of what the program offers, how they can be engaged, next steps? What's the plan?
Thank you for the question. So the plan is to first and foremost develop kind of promotional packages for each of your offices that you can take advantage of to promote this program. We'll be organizing a series of online webinars where residents can attend and learn about the changes to the program and the expanded program. We'll be looking at preparing and launching a bit of a holistic marketing strategy, looking at various media types. We'll be doing some social media marketing as well in collaboration with PIMR and working with our BTSS as well to develop these promotional packages and programs. Likewise, we'll be looking for any kind of opportunity to get out in person at events that may be occurring within your ward that would be suitable, and also look at other kind of opportunities as they come up that we can get involved in to spread the word as widely and quickly as possible.
So is the city permitted in a water bill to insert information to a large volume of residents instead of sort of smaller activities that you've identified?
Yes, we are able
Okay.
to do that.
And there are 5 wards in particular in the urban core who are no doubt quite receptive to having experienced the flooding last August. And I don't want to negate there are other wards. We've heard just colleagues now say this needs to be citywide, and I fully agree, but I think there's an even more receptive audience, particularly if the city has contact information or email addresses of residents that we've worked with over the last year who could be direct contacted as well. Going forward, have we contemplated any potential building code modifications or amendments that would facilitate properties or developments being built to incorporate some of the things that you're proposing? It's difficult and maybe more expensive to go back to properties or buildings after they've been built to incorporate some of the initiatives that you've talked about. But have we talked about, going forward, maybe building codes need to be amended to incorporate modifications or initiatives to help absorb the water?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for pointing that out. The building code, in my humble opinion, can do some catching up when it comes to flood resilience. This is a provincial act. We don't have control over that, but to the extent that the province will engage with us on recommendations for the building code, our staff will be very happy to participate. I will also mention that part of the on-site stormwater management program that is being recommended in the draft infrastructure master plan will, though it's not building code, we are trying to provide resources for developers to get good stormwater management techniques in at the time of redevelopment. There's typically a lot more opportunity when a property is fully redeveloped to, from the ground up, build a resilient property and to increase resilience for the neighborhood. So that's one opportunity that we're pursuing. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that. There's about 22,000 residents in my ward, and I've had the pleasure probably to knock on the door of every one of them over the last few campaigns. But as far as permeable driveways go, if just pick one, under 5 maybe. Like, it's such a rare thing to see, expensive to convert an existing driveway to that, but if it's part of a new build, probably much less expensive because you're starting with scratch. So I think there's a lot of good information here to share with the public, and I'm certainly looking for ways to get that out in large quantities. Just if I can deviate for a minute, filling ditches bad, correct? Like, we're not embracing this. We are going after cases that are brought to the city's attention. The amount of damage that filling culverts in can impact many residences. But in 2024, realizing pre-amalgamation that we could have dealt with it differently, we are going after cases of infill for these culverts.
Thank you, Chair. The first part of the question, infill bad, generally yes. If no driveway or sorry, not driveway, ditch were illegally infilled, I will sleep better at night. There is a proper way to do it. In some cases, there's a proper study that can be done to demonstrate that it's not going to have an impact on the system. So I wouldn't go as far as say that all infill is bad. If it's done in a proper way, it can be demonstrated to have no impact on the system. As far as Councillor, you already mentioned that there are bylaws in place and we have enforcement of those bylaws. So my understanding, I can't speak to, I'm not part of the group that does the enforcement. My understanding is that we do enforce these bylaws. The trick with this is we don't know what to enforce if we don't know that a change has been made. And the amount of surveillance that you would need on a daily basis to figure out if someone's made a minor change. Some ditch infills, you can't tell just by looking at it that it wasn't supposed to be like that. Some neighborhoods were designed with flat front yards and pipes underground. So there's no obvious indication sometimes that a ditch infill has been made. And historically, neighbors and us residents, we didn't think that this was a bad thing. We thought, well, this is my front yard and I want to mow my lawn and it's easier if it's flat. And so we weren't also looking at our neighbors doing this and thinking that's a bad thing. So we don't have necessarily, though things have changed in recent years, we didn't necessarily have the consciousness to say, well, the neighbor just changed something, I better inform the city. Now, we don't also want to have neighbors fighting with neighbors, to be fair, but if there are alterations that are made and we're made aware of it, we will enforce.
Thanks very much for that. Councillor Luloff.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. In the East End, we've experienced significant erosion due to runoff in creek basins, resulting in multi-million-dollar bolstering and preservation projects. Can staff speak a little bit to what kind of impact this program is going to have on erosion in major creek beds like Bilberry and Taylor and Cardinal Creek, and how it may help to prevent private property loss and sliding?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, one of the when I use this broad term health of watercourses, that's one of the aspects of the health of the watercourses. When you have absorbent techniques, you have a smaller runoff volume for very small events, and over time that can have beneficial impacts on erosion. It's sort of the negative of a benefit. You're not causing a problem. It's not the only way to deal with erosion in watercourses. So the Rain Ready Ottawa technique is not necessarily the sharpest tool to use in all cases. The reason why we're using it in the pilot and now the secondary or the primary areas is because they meet those criteria. They have, of the watershed to the watercourse, there's a large area that's been developed and has impervious surfaces, and there's not, it was also done without stormwater management techniques, and there's also not many options remaining. When we did the Pinecrest Westboro retrofit study, for example, we looked at a range of solutions, and the recommended solutions include more than just Rain Ready Ottawa. But some of the alternatives considered, can we just do absorbent techniques on public property or municipal property? And that was shown to be ineffective, or ineffective, I guess is the right word. It wasn't enough. So yes, absorbent techniques are good for erosion. They do take a lot of time to implement, one property at a time, or one sidewalk at a time, or one driveway at a time. So it's not always the best, fastest technique when we have erosion in other watercourses. And when there is already existing erosion issues, you often have to remediate that in addition to doing other things in the upstream water course, or sorry, in the upstream watershed.
Okay, great answer. I suppose that if we get the word out about this program, that perhaps we'll have quite a few people taking this on at the same time, which will make a big difference. So I appreciate your response. Given that homes in the eastern watershed are mainly on marine clays, would many of the solutions or the most effective solutions require replacement of clays with clearstone pits beneath the surface? As following the spring melt, when most of the erosion happens, these clothes are likely to be almost completely inundated. So rendering some of what we've seen today may be ineffective.
Thank you, Chair. That's a difficult question to answer in a broad sense. Clays are site-specific issues often and require site-specific solutions. And it may be counterintuitive, but replacing clays, even if that's possible, because sometimes they have a deep horizon of clay, but replacing clays at the surface aren't necessarily the right solution in all cases. We have to understand where that water is going. Is it going there faster or slower? Is it having an erosion impact on the bank or in the bed of the creek? So these are very specific issues and even in water courses that have marine clays, I can't assume that it's going to be the same solution everywhere. The idea is something that would need to be reviewed, whether it's a development application or a city doing remedial work. It's certainly something that can be reviewed, but unfortunately, I don't have a broad universal answer for that.
I mean, more on the private property side. So like when you're setting up, these rain gardens and whatnot, I mean, it's good to set that up on the surface. But if that water really has no place to go, if it just sits on the surface because the marine clay is inundated with water already, will some of the most effective solutions be, this sort of pitting and adding of clearstone to ensure that there is a place for the water to go?
Thank you for the question. Yes, many of these solutions, part of the process of putting them in involves, if required, soil amendments to improve the infiltration rate there. So for example, with a rain garden, it is recommended that you dig down 2 to 3 feet to amend that soil, add some sand, add some compost to improve the drainage characteristics and improve the ability of the soil right there to absorb any water that is directed towards it.
Okay, that's great. And, given how expensive that can be, I'm sure that this will be quite a comfort to homeowners that are looking to take advantage of this program. Many private homes have catch basins in their rear yards, many of which are in a state of disrepair. They're collapsed or they're full of things like runoff and clays. Homeowners are responsible for them. Will this program allow for remediation of these issues to allow for that water to flow properly? And if not, is that something that might be contemplated?
Thank you, Chair. I was looking at Connor because I was seeing exactly, he knows this program inside out. Generally speaking, the intent of the program is not to remediate existing drainage systems. I don't know if there's been a case where that has overlapped, but repairing or maintaining private infrastructure is generally outside of the scope of this program. I don't know if there's, again, been some kind of surreptitious overlap where that's been able to be done through the program.
I can just jump on there. It's another one of those areas of business of the city that we collaborate with and work with on messaging, but we don't directly address through kind of like rebating something in particular when it comes to rear yard drainage.
Okay, great. Thanks. I appreciate that. I think that probably participating in the program and saving money on a project that's within this program might allow somebody to be able to remediate that on the side, but we can discuss that later. Would the installation of things like weeping tile to facilitate the movement of water to catch basins or stormwater ponds be considered as part of this program as well?
And thank you, Chair. I think Connor's going to answer, but I'll just ask for clarification. I assume when you talk about weeping tile, you're not talking about foundation drainage, but you're talking about perforated pipe, let's say in a lawn or a side yard. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, so thank you for the question. That is something that can be incorporated into either a downspout redirection or the soak away pit rebate as something to help with the infiltration.
Okay, great. Thanks for all the great responses. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for those good questions, Councillor Luloff. Councillor Curry.
Thank you. Just, I know I'm the second time here. On measurement. So we always look at outputs versus outcomes, right? So this report had a lot of outputs. This many people signed up. This is how much money was spent. This is what's the interest of how many people watch the videos. But in terms of the outcomes, have we been able to measure how much water has been diverted from the Ottawa River as a result of what is done here? Like, how do we measure that? Is this actually working?
Thank you for the question. So we gather information on what we call directly connected impervious areas. So these are like the roofs and the driveways. And we gather the information on the total surface area of those that are being managed now by one of these systems. And we use that to kind of calculate the total sort of hard surfaces now that they're being managed with these projects. We're encouraging the installation of to see what kind of impact they're having in terms of stormwater runoff.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just add to that. As I mentioned before, the Rain Ready Ottawa program is a child of retrofit studies, and these retrofit studies look comprehensively at the health of small water courses. In the retrofit studies, part of the recommendations includes monitoring and when to start monitoring. This is a type of technique that you need a certain critical mass of uptake for it to be worthwhile to start monitoring. The retrofit studies give us a baseline to compare against, so we have the baseline. And when a certain amount of these techniques are installed, then the monitoring can begin to, and the retrofit studies typically recommend an adaptive pathway approach. So based on the monitoring, there may be adjustments to the approach. The actual critical mass and the actual monitoring is specific to the different water courses. So each different retrofit study will have to do this specific to the needs of the water course.
Okay, so really there hasn't been any real measurement yet because there's not enough critical mass. Got it. So here's the thing. Even the ways that we're the different options people have, whether they do a permeable driveway, they do a soak pit, or they do a rain barrel, whatever. I think that will make this very difficult to measure. And not like I'm going to vote against this, but I just think, what about if we instead said, okay, listen, everybody in this area, to David Wise's point, because we don't have a stormwater management pond in these neighborhoods, everybody like a green bin is getting a water, what are those things called? Rain barrels. Everybody's getting one, and you have to install it. And then we're going to measure how much water came off. Like, wouldn't that immediately tell you this is going to make a difference, instead of saying, well, gee, I hope people sign up for this thing and maybe it eventually will have critical mass? Like, what if we just said, look, instead of spending the money this way, we're going to spend it by making sure everybody has a rain barrel?
So Chair, I think it is important to note again that this is not a quantity program. This is not about alleviating flooding. This is not about alleviating the volume of water that is flowing through. It might soften the curve a little bit, but that's not the intent of the program. The intent of the program is to improve water quality. And that's a different metric than that. So in terms of the flow rate of water, when you have a major rain event, a major flooding event like we've had, back in August last year, those flooding events are of such volume that they would bypass entirely any of the rain ready mitigations that anyone might put. They would bypass rain barrels, all of those things, because they're point source volume events. What Haran has outlined here, though, is within the retrofit study and within the retrofit program, it is a combination of multiple programs, including interventions within that public right of way, including interventions within the actual creek bed itself. But the Rain Ready program is a point contribution to help improve that water quality, but it is not going to affect actual volume of water. Those are different programs that are needed for that.
Okay, I'll save my brilliant idea for a different program. Thank you.
I personally like your idea, Councillor. I just did want to make one quick comment. There's no other speakers on the list here, but I just wanted to say we've been using a relatively small financial incentive from the city, and it's been very effective in leveraging that private homeowner investment, a fourfold private homeowner investment compared to what the city has invested. So, and just given that small public investment and I guess the ease on public infrastructure and the downstream effects that this has. It's obviously a very worthwhile. So thanks to staff team for all of your work on this and for the great questions from councillors today. So with that, are we able to carry the recommendations? Okay, thank you for that. Any in-camera items? We don't have any. Information previously distributed. There's the urban forest management plan resource requirements on there. I didn't hear anyone wanting to lift that for next meeting. Any notices of motion? Okay, seeing none. Any inquiries?
I'll bring it to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so we are adjourned, and the next meeting of the Environment and Climate Change Committee will be on Tuesday, May 21st, 2024. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Chair.